What up, everybody? BMF Season 4, Episode 3 starts out with Meech, Terry, and Loco in Mexico, right in the back of a truck, hiding under some boards, when a group of guys stopped the truck, killed the drivers, looking for Loco because he's a wanted fugitive with reward money on his head. The poster had Federal Bureau of Investigation on it also, so Loco might be wanted in both the US and Mexico. Loco's name is Geronimo Manuel, and his last name starts with a J and an I, so it's most likely Jimenez. After they killed the guys and were driving off in the truck, Meech and Loco were driving off, leaving one of the drivers of the truck to die who was still alive, and T behind also, to where T had to run behind the truck and jump in the back. At this point, the narrator, OG Terry, said that Meech's definition of us had started to change. And this set the stage for the end of the episode for Terry to start moving on his own behind Meech's back because he feels like Meech is trusting other people before him. Back in the States, on the current timeline, we get more information why Duffy's on the run. It's because he wet up a stash house and killed a kid who was on his way to the league. Duffy's alias that he's using in Atlanta is Don Gecko. Terry and Meech got Nicole an expensive lawyer so she could beat her case concerning the stolen car, and was heading to Atlanta this episode for what I believe to be her college orientation. Breeze was already in college in Atlanta and got off the phone with Nicole to holler at some girls. But both Lucille and Terry went with Nicole. Lucille used the excuse of what happened with Nicole getting caught hooking up with Breeze to go to Atlanta, and Terry went because Meech hadn't been answering his phone calls. When Lucille, Terry, and Nicole arrived at Meech's house, Meech was hooking up with Lucky, and she put away a picture frame with some blue dolphins on it and what looked like to be some coke and weed on it also. Once the room was cleared, Meech let Terry know that Bryant is now in Atlanta and part of the Atlanta PD. Detective Bryant had Waters from Detroit ship the stolen car Meech gave Nicole to Atlanta, and the car had 3 sets of fingerprints. One was Nicole, then one was Don Gecko, Duffy's alias, and another one they couldn't identify and was probably Meech, but Meech isn't in the system. Bryant has Waters running Duffy's prints back in Detroit to find his real identity. Bryant also spotted both Meech and Duffy on the car dealership's security footage. The kid that got them caught up with this whole mess with the car dealership is a kid named Kenny Johnson, and he was running a side hustle selling stolen cars. And Alexandra, the lady from the dealership, gave them Kenny Johnson's information so they could get to him before he snitched. It was also said that Alexandra has family in the game, so that could also come back into play at some point. At the end of this conversation, Meech asked Laz if he goes to church because Lucille was in town, and told Meech that they were all going to church on Sunday. And Laz told Meech that he goes to church every Sunday. Laz goes to church with his grandmother. So the Flannery family, minus Charles, went to that church called the Church of Sacred Life in Atlanta, Georgia, with Pastor Coleman. The Church of Sacred Life has an ATM in the church. The hand fans have Pastor Coleman's latest book on them, and the usher was even trying to give Meech to give him a tip after giving them good seats, but Meech just shook his hand. Pastor Coleman even danced on the money at the altar, a completely different style of church than what we saw last week at Lucille's church. And if I was to take a guess, I would say that the Pastor Coleman character is inspired by Creflo Dollar. But either though Lucille didn't completely agree with Pastor Coleman's preaching style, she still let him speak into her life after service when she went to talk to him, and he let her know that God doesn't dim his light, and they don't hide their blessings, and that the stars guide the way. Because of that, Lucille ended up accepting the fur coat that Meech tried giving her prior to that she said that she couldn't accept. Charles met a waitress this episode at Terry's restaurant named Cecilia, who he plans on taking out on a date. And later on, when he told this to Lucille, she acted like she wasn't bothered by it, but she was definitely upset because when Charles left her room, she grabbed her fur coat and started breathing hard. While Meech and Terry were at church, Duffy went to confront Kenny Johnson and was supposed to be paying him off to leave town. But Kenny Johnson preferred to snitch, saying he has a future and plans to become an EMT, and was only still in the cars to pay for EMT school. At this point, Bryant showed up at Kenny's apartment, and Duffy put a gun to Kenny, and they snuck out the back. It wasn't showed what Duffy did with Kenny Johnson, but I definitely think he killed him and didn't let Meech know, because Duffy was seen later in the episode at Meech's house. After showing up at Kenny Johnson's house and not finding him, Bryant then questioned Alexandra, and when she wouldn't tell him anything, he grabbed her wrist, called her grimy, and told her that she's now on his list. This episode, Lil Mil's father figured out that Bryant is a cop, and he let Bryant know that Meech was at Lil Mil's funeral. After church, Meech and Terry went to Purdy's video shoot, and her producer Trell was being loud when Meech told Terry that some guys love the attention. T responded to Meech, who, him, that pastor, or you. At this video shoot, Meech met Purdy's friend and makeup artist, Maria, and gave her his number. Trell introduced himself to Meech and Terry and was disrespectful to them. Then he tried forcing his arm around Maria as he walked off. Purdy let them know that everything they had at the video shoot was rented because Meech lent them the cars for the video shoot. She also let them know that she has to pay everything back to the label out of her own pocket. Because of that, Meech and Terry decided to start their own record label, and right now the name they have is Stomping Ground Records. But when Purdy was walking away, we see that she also plays with her nose. Then later, Jay Pusha showed up to Meech's house in Atlanta and let them know that he moved almost the entire shipment himself, and there was only a few keys left. This had Terry heated, and he let Meech know that Jay Pusha broke the chain of command, and he's a snake, and Meech himself should know how dangerous that is. Keeping in mind that Meech got bit by the snake at the beginning of episode 1 of season 4. And that caused problems for Terry when he got back in Detroit, because Markeisha was pressing him about the meeting with Isaac Roberts. So Terry stepped on the remaining bricks to make the weight, but when they went to make the drop, they saw that it was an undercover sting. So this leaves the question, who's the snitch? Isaac Roberts, Boom, or Markeisha? Then Loco showed up at Meech's house and let him know because of Pablo Escobar's death that the DEA was watching the sky and they had to switch up the route through Mexico and start using St. Louis permanently. When Meech let Loco know he would have Jay Pusha running point, Loco asked Meech if he trusted Jay Pusha with his life, and Meech told Loco that Jay Pusha has his back. So when Terry got word about this, he was even more heated and tried telling Meech that they needed to replace Jay Pusha, but Meech didn't listen. Going back to what the narrator OG Terry said at the beginning of the episode about Meech's definition of us was starting to change. Because of that, Markeisha was able to get into Terry's ear about Meech and said that Meech doesn't need to know what Terry's doing. After that, we saw Terry meeting up with B. Mickey at his diner, and he let B. Mickey know that he's not back in, but B. Mickey was going to do whatever Terry tells him to do. And when Hoop asked Terry why he's choosing B. Mickey over him, Terry told Hoop that B. Mickey is disposable, and when bodies start to drop, he would rather it be B. Mickey than Hoop. So Terry has a plan to use B. Mickey to do some kind of dirt behind Meech's back, and doesn't care if B. Mickey gets killed in the process. But what he doesn't know is that his father Charles has been hanging out with B. Mickey and plans to go back to B. Mickey's place to help him fix some things. A couple things about Terry's meeting with B. Mickey is that he wouldn't even look at him. He had his back turned to him the whole time smoking a cigar, and Hoop had his gun pointed at B. Mickey. Intimidation tactics. Then at the end of the episode, the narrator OG Terry said, at times he couldn't get through to his brother. He had to go over his head or behind his back. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.